Aloha, welcome everybody. I've got Mark Mason, one of our members of our board of directors, with us. I'm very excited to get Mark's voice included with the videos we've been putting out recently. And Mark, I met you just this year, and you've been an incredible asset to this group, and very excited to get your opinion on all this. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and where you were before Occupy began?
Well, my activist involvement in political concerns began in the late 60s and early 70s. As many in my generation were at that time, I was swept up in the student anti-war movement, the anti-Vietnam War movement of the late 60s and 70s. During the 70s and 80s, I became involved in the Sierra Club, concerned about environmental issues, wilderness issues, land management in the western United States. It dawned on many of us by the 90s that environmental issues really were connected to sort of big money and lobbying and sort of controlling state and federal environmental laws and policies. So I became involved in campaign finance reform during the 1990s and was involved with a committee that ran a campaign finance reform initiative here in California. And from that, I became swept up again by the Occupy movement, the progressive movement here in the fall of last year. And having learned about the Article V.org, it was just a natural. It really is the right thing at the right time to address issues from many different progressive concerns. The environmental angle is where I came in, connected to it, but there are many, many other concerns or people coming together in Occupy, and I think Article V is really the right thing to do at the right time here.
Yeah, I think actually that's a good point because a lot of times people would overlook the environmental aspects that we could get out of a convention, and I have to admit that's one of the aspects that I desire most out of a convention because I feel that we're a little bit out of control with our environmental policies, and we're not practicing good stewardship of our planet. And I really think it's up to us to take control of it, and market forces don't really account for those kinds of things. So that's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up.
I
Also,
think being very good about that, if I may say so, because as you and I know, just yesterday we received a note from the scientific community that global warming is serious and the U.S. government's not doing anything about it. They're not taking any steps towards any rectification of this very serious global warming concerns.
going back to September 2011, where were you when Occupy first began? Do you remember where you first learned about it and what really made you identify with the movement?
I think I was thinking about many other things other than the idea of a Occupy movement. It burst upon the scene. We all learned about it through alternative media. I think initially the mainstream media ignored it, so I picked up on it, and many people I've talked to learned about it through the internet. And the connection was immediate. I think there's a broad concern for a long time about the connection between money and politics and somehow disconnecting those. I was involved, as I said, during the 90s in campaign finance reform, and here was a group of people saying that they're the 99% and the 1% bankers who just received these massive trillion-dollar bailouts, and it was just a natural to connect to that, as along with many, many other people in the United States.
Now, I met you through InterOccupy. and how long did it take for you to become involved with InterOccupy? Um, and you were a facilitator, I think, on a lot of those meetings at first too. Can you tell us about what that was like at first and how that all got going?
Yes, the InterOccupy nonprofit, mostly volunteer organization, I think is sort of an invaluable component of the national Occupy movement. I don't recall precisely how I learned about it. Um, through some internet association, either through Facebook or an email I received from someone, but it seemed to offer the only opportunity for people throughout the United States to converse with each other about concerns, just to share information. And so I did get involved in the initial phone calls. I think it was January of this year, if not December. I knew about it and became involved early this year in 2012. It was just valuable for information sharing, tremendously valuable. And I did become involved as a facilitator for some meetings, online conference telephone calls, and that's where we connected up at that point.
And how many of those meetings were you attending? How many different kinds of meetings? And how many were you facilitating? It seemed like you were kind of all over the place there for a little while.
Many, yeah, because the InterOccupy organization provides an opportunity for um, a variety of topics to be covered on telephone calls they had sessions for California college concerns about the state budgeting to national and international concerns. And I just felt it was a valuable resource. I probably learned much more about what was happening in the Occupy movement outside of the San Francisco Bay Area than others learned from me. So I think it was a valuable learning tool. I think the sharing of information was extremely valuable.
Well, I can attest to that. Being out here in Hawaii, we feel like a tree falling in the woods sometimes in the Occupy movement. And when I learned about InterOccupy, I was pretty excited to participate as well, especially since there was an Article 5 group already in the works. And now, where did you first learn about Article 5? Was it InterOccupy, or was it actually in a class, or just as a hobby before that?
I would say I learned about it through InterOccupy. It's one of those things that's in the back of your mind that you learned in college civics or something, or you peruse on an odd afternoon scan oh yes, the Constitution. I'll scan through it, and there's something in there, Article 5, and you move on. And but the movement itself to generate a popular interest in and to create an actual on-the-ground Occupy movement, I learned about that through InterOccupy and your participation and others in the phone calls, the conference calls we had.
Now, of all of these groups that you were in, of all these different issues that everybody was talking about, everybody was meeting about, I know I attended one with Noam Chomsky, and I mean, there was a lot of very attractive things that people were talking about, but you were drawn to Article 5 in particular, and now you're a member of our board of directors. What is it about Article 5? Which aspect of it was it that really drew you towards this issue?
That's a really genuinely fascinating question. It tracks back to my activist work during the 1990s when I was involved in campaign finance reform. Um, I felt at that time that we were dealing with systemic issues that needed to be fixed at the federal level. Money in politics and campaign finance reform was a concern of mine during the 90s. So when we have the burst of the Occupy movement, and they're talking about the 99% and the concentration of wealth in the banking. And we have this very concrete event that I would simply call robbery of the public treasury by the banks of trillions of dollars. So we have concrete evidence. It's right in front of us anymore, where the money and the politics became central again for me here in the 2011 and 2012 during the past year. So we have money in politics, we have campaign finance reform, and then we have the Occupy movement in 99% focusing on the concentration of power in the banking sector. And I would say that I was particularly attracted to and passionate about the Occupy movement because we didn't rush immediately to like, oh, let's endorse candidate A or candidate B. There was an immediate broad sort of understanding that there was a problem with money in politics and that it wasn't going to be fixed by just changing the names and faces in Congress or the White House. So along comes Article 5 and Enter Occupy, and it's just really a natural. We are dealing with systemic issues. There's a push to tax the rich and such, and that's all very good in the very short term. But Article 5 is just a natural fit for the zeitgeist of the times. Not just me, but many people recognize that there's a serious disconnect between government and the people, and that blockage, that wall really is massive money that comes from a very tiny sector of the population.
Taking a look at the 2012 election, I know you've got some very strong opinions about that. I also do. I see these elections as the shiny objects that don't really mean anything about the troubles that plague our society. And you have some opinions about that too. I just want to get some of your ideas out there and have you share those thoughts with everybody.
I'm concerned about the shiny objects. We do have an election. Yes, it's important. The person who's going to be in the White House for the next 4 years, that is important. I don't deny that in any sense. My concern is that actually talking to my son, and I keenly recall his sense of betrayal. His first major election, he votes for Obama, good times are ahead, and no influence from me. He comes to me, like a year and a half later, 2010, 2011, and he tells me a sense of betrayal. I'm concerned that we're going to focus too much attention on the horse race. We're kind of stuck, really stuck in a jam where there's no win-win situation here.
I think we'll have to do some more conversations again here in the near future, Mark. I really appreciate you getting together with me here on a Friday and sitting down and talking about some of these issues and sharing it with everybody. And I hope that everybody gets a chance to take a closer look at what we're doing and gets to put their energy towards this as well, because I think it's really where we're all headed. We need a holistic change in humanity just to preserve ourselves at this point. So thanks again for joining us, and we will be talking again soon.
Thank you. It is a genuine honor to be associated in any way with Article V. It's nice talking to you, Dan.
Aloha.